Well, hello, traders and investors. I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets, and we're doing it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time, we're asking ourselves what happened today. What might it tell us about the coming days? Do a show 5 times a week. It's every Sunday and Monday through Thursday. Broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube, and it's under the channel L.A. Little. If you want to subscribe, you can just reach up in the right-hand corner, hit the subscription button. It's free, it's easy, keeps you up to date with what's going on. As far as what's going on, let's take a look at the quotes. You know, it was a Draghi day, an ECB day. The ECB came out and lowered rates again, went negative interest rates even deeper, added more QE, and what happened? The DAX sells off. It was up 2%. Flipped around, closed down 2.3%. Huge reversal on the DAX, on the CACs, on the European stocks in general. What are they telling us? Are they telling us that whatever he delivered just wasn't enough? Are they telling us that they don't believe the central bankers can do it anymore? I'm not sure what they're telling us, but you have to think that part of it was you had a big run up, so it was a sell the news situation. But part of it was just plain disappointment in that Europe just can't seem to get out of its doldrums. And it seems to be that this market doesn't think that anything they do in terms of what Draghi does is going to be able to pull them out of it. So a big sell-off there. Our markets were down pretty big to start the day, but you know what? Actually, they were up on the early news, right? Then they traded down quite a bit. But by the end of the day, it really wasn't bad. I mean, they ended up almost even. You're sitting here with the S&P actually does get to even. Everything else just slightly down. Russell was the big one, down 0.82. But the dollar, the euro, the dollar went down 1%, was up almost 1% pre-market. And the euro did the same thing, flipped around from down big to up big. And so we had a huge reversal take place intraday in these markets. Overseas, outside of Europe, it's pretty much not much happening there. Let's pop in, take a look at the charts. And I'm going to start with ground zero here on the DAX. The DAX comes out, and you had a big reversal, right? You may not be able to see it, so I'll point out the bars here. But you have starting at this price point up here was the high. This was after Draghi did what he wanted to do. So your swing point high was here. You tested way over that swing point high, so you get way over it, right? And then you start to give it up, and not only did you give it up, you just kept giving it up, and you close way down here. So a huge wide price spread bar, reversal bar, hanging man, huge volume. Now, the quote-unquote the good thing, you got volume on the test that says you can test back up there. The bad thing, you're so far down to get back up there is probably not that likely on the next bar. So my take here is you'll get a little bounce probably, but this thing's going to want to try and trade to the downside now. Where's the next logical place? Well, it's back down into this area. So I would think that before this is over, we're going to see them trade back down here before they trade back up there. That's on the DAX. If we look at the CACs, which is the French market, now the French market also same sort of idea, right? Big reversal on it. So you had the big spike up, right? Here's the top. Almost got into this high volume bar from way over here. Just misses it, right? That's just a little bit higher up. So it just misses that. It's pushing pretty good volume on the way up, but it closes into the bottom of the bullish retest regenerate. It looks to me like that's going to try and bounce a little bit as well, but probably give it up and then go back to seek these lower levels. So in Europe, it's not looking so hot. And I didn't take a chance. I didn't get a chance to look at the Swiss market. Let me see how it did. Same thing. So the Swiss market has been struggling to get over that bearish retest regenerate. It's been the weakest, partially because of currency. But it gets up, tests the top of it, finally does the full retest, and then gives it all up and heads back down the other way as well. Volume not as heavy as we've seen elsewhere, but does trade to the downside. So pretty much across Europe, no matter where you look, it was pretty much the same story all across the board, and that is you had big reversals, you close back down near the lows, and it looks as if those markets are going to try and trade lower as a result. If we pop over to the U.S. markets, you actually had bearish engulfings until the last hour. And so when what I'm talking about there, if I draw it in here, this looked more like this until the last hour. And then the last hour, they pick it up, the buyers start creeping in, and they end up with dojis everywhere. Now, volume wasn't heavy, but you are trying to get back into the swing point low. That's the 1993.26 number. You close it at 1989. That is 3 bars underneath it. You know, this does look like it's trying to regenerate to the downside, but it's having a heck of a time getting there. Now, if you compare that and go to, say, the weakest index, which has been the NDX, and we look at the NDX itself, the NDX traded in on a bullish retest regen. So anytime you break a swing point, right, that sets up the potential to come back and test it. And so this swing point's getting tested. It tested right into the bottom of that swing point. The number on it was 4238. And you close it and you chest into 4232. So you get into it, you get underneath it, you get back over it, you have less volume. That's a successful test. And so if you have a successful test, that says, hey, you can go back the other way. In other words, you didn't hit it with more volume, and you got under the price and then back over the price. And so it's actually this bar. And so that's actually a positive test, right? And says you can try and regenerate higher. So when you're looking at the NASDAQ, you're looking at the NDX, you're looking at the S&P 500, all of those don't look that negative. We know the backdrop in Europe is negative, but the backdrop here isn't. If we go to the Russell, that's the only one that closed lower today. Russell closes under the big bar, a little bit less volume, but under it. Still trying to get back to the swing point high. So you have a slight negative here, a little continuation to the downside. If we look inside the market and look at some of the sectors, you actually have the same thing here. You had bearish engulfing, and that typically means you're going to get another bar down, but by the end of the day, it ended up not that way. You ended up with big dojis pretty much across the board. There were a few little tidbits here that were negative. For example, the financials pushed down into the swing point high, exhibited more volume. So that says, hey, it can do it again. Over on the XLV, well, I pulled up the XLY. Not much on the XLY. On the XLV, you actually couldn't really get going today. So that's kind of a little bit of a negative too. But if you look at these safety sectors, like the XLU, right, that thing still, it pushed over the high back underneath it, but pushed with more volume. So it says it's going to try to trade up. And if you look at the durables, which is the other big safety network sector, that one also pushed up, and it pushed up with more volume. So money still wants to be put to work in this market on the long side, and they're not afraid to do it. You didn't have big volume on the downside today. As a result, you end up getting a push back the other way by the end of the bell. And so this, so far, is a little mixed. Some of the sectors, the one index, most of them dojis. Dojis are basically, you can go either way. So we'll have to see what Europe does, because I think Europe's going to drive us now, as if they haven't been. They have been. And so we'll have to see what Europe does. You had such a big fast. You know, when you have those days like that, the next day everybody wakes up and they say, okay, is that really what we should have been doing? And so we'll probably see a little attempt to rise tomorrow. But if they can't raise Europe up tomorrow, and the big problem on Europe is not the European equities itself, it's going to be on the euro, because you had that big reversal in the euro. That's not, if you remember back, this is what happened to Japan. Japan did the negative interest rates, and Japan went up. Well, they did negative interest rates here today, and you did a 2.6% flip back to the top side in a currency. That's a big move. This currency now wants to go back up to the top. That's not good for the European equities. And if the European equities are bleeding all over ours, it's going to make ours stagnate at best, maybe trade lower. So we'll see if the European equities can get any kind of lift tomorrow. If they can't, I suspect it's going to bleed over here by the end of the bell. That's it for today. We'll see how we end up tomorrow. It's a mixed week, right? You're trading in this range. You've had the big push. You had it everywhere in the equities, whether you're looking at the U.S., whether you're looking at Europe, and so you've had the big push. Now it's either consolidating or rolling, and you don't know until after the fact which one it is, unless it starts giving you some clues. We've got enough mixed clues here tonight that you can't say as to what's going to happen tomorrow. I think really the driver is going to be Europe, and it's just a question of if it drives straight home to the downside or takes a little pause after the big reversal today. That's it for tonight. I'll see you next time on Sunday. Have a great one.